are going to get started. This was ordered in a white, so I'm using this white 100-gram acrylic yarn. This is a medium weight, just in case. You can use a lightweight or medium weight for this pattern. I would not suggest you go above that size, just because again it's a bikini, so it actually needs to be super lightweight. You can also use a cotton for this. You don't have to use an acrylic yarn. You can use a cotton. I think cotton is also perfect for a pattern like this. So we are going to start with the bottom, and then we get to the bralette later. Let me open the soap, and for reference I'm using a 3mm. I'm using the size, the yarn, the crochet hook recommended for this particular yarn is actually, let's see, a 4 and a 4.5, but I am using a 3 just because I want my stitches to be tighter and I want my stitches to be smaller. I always recommend that you size down in your crochet hook if you want to make sure that your pattern is lightweight, because when you size up, your stitches are going to be bigger, which means you're going to use more yarn instead of when you use a smaller crochet hook. By the way, that's what I wanted to say. So making this for a size medium, but of course you can make this in whatever size you want to.
And right after the slip knot, I am going to chain a total of 14 chains as my foundation chain. And this is the same for every size if you're making every size.
Chain of total of 14, and I'm going to chain an extra 1. From here on, I am going to go into the second chain with a double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over, go into that second chain with 1 double crochet. Into this next, I'm going to yarn over and go with a double crochet. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat 1 double crochet until I get to the very end of this row. So at the end of the row, I should have a total of 14 double crochets. Right here, I am at the end of the row. I have 14 stitches in total. For the next row, you are going to chain 1, and we are going to turn and repeat row 1, which is into this very first stitch. Right here, I am going to yarn over and insert a double crochet. Into the next 1 double crochet. Into the next 1 double crochet. And into the next 1 double crochet. And you are going to repeat this until you get to the end of this row as well. Just like that, and we're going to repeat this for a total of 3 more rows. So chain 1, turn into your very first stitch, insert your first double crochet stitch, into the second 1 double crochet stitch, into the third 1 double crochet stitch, into the fourth 1 double, and so on until you get to the 14th stitch. I have my 5 rows of double crochet. Now we are going to start increasing for the front part. So this is just a base, so we now have to do the front and then do the back. For the front, we are going to chain 1 and turn, and right into this very first double crochet you are going to yarn over and insert a double crochet. Right after, you're going to yarn over again and insert another double crochet into that stitch. So this is going to be the very first increase. So we're basically inserting 2 double crochets into our very first stitch. Into the second stitch, you're going to yarn over and insert 1 double crochet. Into the next, yarn over and insert a double crochet. Into the next, yarn over and insert a double crochet. Continue to do this until you get to the very end of this row. Coming to the end of the row, I am going to insert my last double crochet into that very last stitch. And because we did increase at the beginning by inserting 2 double crochets, we want to make sure we do the same thing at the end. So whatever you do at the beginning, you do the same exact thing at the end. So right into this last stitch, I am going to yarn over again and go right into that stitch with a last double crochet, 1 more. And this is what we have after row 6. For row 7, you are going to yarn over and chain, and turn, and to go ahead and insert a double crochet. So yarn over, go into your very first stitch with a double crochet. From there on, you're going to go into this next stitch with a double crochet. So for this row, we are not increasing. We are actually just inserting 1 double crochet into every stitch until we get to the very end of this 7th row, I think. Yes, 7th row. So just continue to insert 1 double crochet like I am doing currently until you get to the end. So right here I'm at the end of row 7. I did make sure that I insert my last double crochet into that last stitch. For row 8, we are going to do another increase. So you're going to chain 1 and turn, and into your very first stitch you're going to yarn over and insert a double crochet. And just the same way we did for row 6, you are going to go back into that same stitch with 1 double crochet, and that is going to be your second increase. From here on, you are just going to go ahead and insert a double crochet into the next stitch, yarn over and insert a double crochet into the next stitch, yarn over and a double crochet into the next stitch, and continue to do this until you get to the end of this row as well. Again, you want to make sure that you're going into that last stitch. Do not skip any stitch. So right into the last stitch, because again we did increase at the beginning, we are going to increase at the end. So right in there I'm going to insert another double crochet stitch. So for the next row, we are going to go ahead and chain 1 again and turn, and this time around we are also not increasing. So we're just going to go into this very first stitch with our first double crochet stitch, and of course, because we are not increasing, we are just going to go into the next with a double crochet and continue to do 1 double crochet, insert 1 double crochet into every stitch right until we get to the very end of this row as well. Super simple. Again, this is a size medium, guys. I will put in the details in the description and also while I'm editing this video for different sizes, just so you guys know I'm only making this in one size, so I do not know the actual sizing, but I will try to leave some recommended I'll just try to edit this in a way that you'll be able to make this for your own size as well. So right there we just finished, I think this is row 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, row 10, right? We can see that it is getting bigger as we go. From here on, we are going to go ahead and chain 1, and for row 11 we are going to do the same increase pattern. So right into the very first stitch, you're going to yarn over, go into that very first stitch with your first double crochet, and right after that first, you're going to yarn over and go back into the same stitch with your second double crochet, and that is going to be the increase. From there on, yarn over and go into the next with 1 double crochet, into the next with 1 double crochet, into the next, and until you get to the very end. and coming to the end, you want to make sure that you go in there with 2 double crochets to make sure you balance off the exact same thing you did at the beginning, because whatever you do on one side, you are doing on the opposite side. So this is what a size medium looks like after your 11th row. Because I'm making a size medium, I will be switching something a little bit. So if you're making a size small, you can still go ahead and do this increase pattern, which is basically the next row, which is row 12. So whenever you're working on row 12, you're going to just do a normal double crochet row. While you're working on odd numbers, you are going to increase. But because I'm making a size medium and she doesn't want this to be high-waisted, I am going to be increasing each and every row. So if you're making a size small, you can still go ahead and do each and every row. If you're making a size large, you can still just continue to do the next step that I'm about to do, which is going to be which is going to be an increase on every row. If you're making a size bigger than large, then I'll suggest you double your increase. So instead of increasing just on the first row, I would probably say increase on the second row. Just on the first stitch, sorry, I would say increase on the second stitch as well, and that's if you don't want this to be high-waisted. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. But yeah, in the next row, because I'm making a size medium, I'm gonna chain and I'm going to do my next increase. So I'm going to yarn over and into this very first stitch a double crochet, and into the same stitch a double crochet. Again, like I said, if you're making a size small, extra large, you don't have to increase on this 13th. Is this my 13th row? Let me check. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. This is my 12th row, so you don't have to do the increase. You can just do the basic double crochet. But if you're making a medium to large, then you can do the same thing that I'm doing. And if you're making a large, you can go into this next double crochet with 2 double crochets as well. But because I'm not making a large, I'm just going to yarn over and go in there with 1 double crochet. And also, just this is in case you don't want it to be high-waisted, like the picture you guys see, the inspo. But if you want it to be, then that means you still can do more rows. I cannot do more rows because she doesn't want it to be high-waisted, which means my rows are limited. So in that case, I have to increase my increase rows, if it makes sense. If that makes sense, because I want to make sure that before I finish off my rows, I can still have a good width. So we have my full 14 rows. I am going to go ahead and cut off the yarn because the front part is already complete. Again, guys, if you want to make this a little bit high-waisted, all you have to do is just increase the amount of rows you're making. But because this is not an high-waisted bikini, I am going to just leave mine on this length. And also you have to keep in mind that this stretches. You want to make sure that when you eventually put this on, it's gonna be a good fit. So keep that in mind, depending on the yarn you're using. Of course, if you're using an acrylic, you have way more possibility of that than when you're using a cotton, so keep that in mind. So right after the cut, I am going to reattach my yarn to the opposite end of the pattern. So right here, I am going to just find my very first chain, because you do remember that we started with a chain, and I'm going to grab my working yarn and make sure I attach that with a slip knot. Just like that. And just like that, I'm going to tighten this a bit to be safe. From here on, I have 2 loose ends, which I'm going to show you guys how I usually just play around with this. So later on, I don't have to do it. So I have 2 loose ends. I usually just like to grab them and pass them underneath. I'm going to grab my crochet hook and go into that very first stitch, guys. Hopefully you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm not going into the chain, I'm going into the stitch. So the lower part of the stitch is where I'm going to insert my crochet hook. From there, this is my working yarn. These are my 2 excess yarn. I'm going to grab my working yarn and pull through. From there on, I'm going to chain 1. After my chain 1, I'm going to yarn over and go back into that same space making sure my crochet hook goes underneath my 2 excess yarn. I'm gonna grab the yarn, my working yarn. I have 3 loops, just the same way you do a double crochet, yarn over, pull through your first 2 and then through the last 2. And yarn over and go back into that same stitch. By the way, I'm making sure my crochet hook goes underneath my excess yarns, so I can just sew that in, and later on I can just easily cut it off and I don't have to think about it. So right there we have 2 double crochets. From there on, you're going to go into the next stitch with 1 double crochet, into the next 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 with 1 double crochet. And after a few stitches over the loose ends, I can easily just leave that because now I know it's secure, and I'm going to just repeat 1 double crochet until I get to the end of the row. And when I get to the end of the row, you want to make sure you go right into your last chain or stitch with 1 double crochet. And because we did increase at the beginning, you are going to go back into that stitch with another double crochet. And right there we have a first increase on the opposite side. From here on, we are going to chain 1 and turn, and into the very first stitch you're going to do 2 double crochets. So for the back side of this bikini, we are going to be increasing on every row because again we want you guys know the reason. So I'm gonna go into this next stitch with 1 double crochet to the next. So we're only increasing at the very first stitch with 2 double crochets. So right there I'm gonna just go ahead and repeat 1 double crochet each until I get to the very end of the second row. Now I can cut this off, by the way. This is the reason why I usually just like to go over my loose ends with my stitches, because then I can just cut that off so I can have a neat work. Carefully just insert 1 double crochet until you get to the end of this row, which is a second, by the way. You want to make sure you're not skipping any stitch. So right into the last, I am going to insert 1, and I'm going to go back into that same stitch with an extra. Guys, if you're a beginner, use a stitch marker so you know where your first and your last stitch is. I have been doing this for years, so I kind of know how to, I can identify my stitches easily. But if you're new and you want to use a stitch marker, you should. Honestly, you should. So right there we have our second row on the back. We are going to now go ahead and chain 1, turn and repeat. So we're repeating the increase, which is 2 double crochet into our first stitch. So 1, 2, 1 double crochet into our next, 1 double crochet into the next following stitches until you get to the end. And of course, when we get to the end, because we did increase at the beginning, we are going to insert an additional double crochet into our very last stitch, because again, like I said, whatever you do at the beginning, you want to make sure you do at the end. And guys, this is what I'm going to repeat for a good amount of rows. So I'm going to just chain 1, do the increase pattern until this panel is a little bit big. I don't know exactly how much I will be doing, but I'll see you guys in the next clip to let you guys know exactly how much rows that I ended up doing. Hey guys, so I just finished the back panel. I did a total of 20 rows. So basically from where I started increasing, I did 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I have 1 more. So I'm going to do the last one. So I have 19 now. I want to do 20 rows in total. But now you can see that when you flip this, over, you should have something like this. Again, this is a size medium, and also this is a low waist, so if you want it to be high-waisted, all you have to do is continue to do more rows. But if you're making a size medium and you want it to be high-waisted, I'll just suggest you do one more. You guys will see. So I'm gonna do my last row, which will leave me with 20 rows, and then we can do the next part. So I'm just gonna insert my. So guys, I finally have my 20 rows. Again, like I said, keep in mind that this is an acrylic yarn, so it does stretch, and you want to make sure that when you wear this and you eventually tie it, it should fit you. I wouldn't want this to fit my babe in a different way. Did I say babe? Yeah, I mean babe, because I love to call you guys babe. I wouldn't want it to fit her not fit perfectly, so I like to just still keep that in mind. But again, if you're using a cotton, you might probably have less stretchiness on your stitches, but that's totally fine. You just want to make sure that you use your measurement. So now we are going to seal this entire panel. So to do that, you are going to chain one, and into your very first stitch, insert a single crochet, and into the next, one single crochet, into the next, one single crochet, into the next, a single crochet. Repeat one single crochet until you get to the end. So you want to make sure that you single crochet right to the very end, and when we get at the end, we are going to single crochet all the way to this side. And to do that, we don't have rows, so you're basically going to make sure you insert one single crochet into every available stitch. Let me zoom in a bit so you guys can see exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to still chain one on this side, and when I say available space, is basically one single crochet right there, and you carefully just want to see where you can insert one single crochet next, because again, we don't have stitches on the side that we can insert a single crochet into, sorry. So you want to make sure that you just insert one single crochet. Make sure there are no gaps in between your stitches like you see, but at the same time, I am not going to go into the same space with two because you're not increasing. So carefully just make your way down with one single crochet. It doesn't have to be perfect, just carefully just do this like that until you get to the very end. And right here I'm back at the front, so I am going to chain one when I get to the edge, and inside this very first stitch I'm going to insert a single crochet, and I'm just going to go ahead and insert one single crochet carefully, and just do exactly what I just did on the two sides. So basically what I did right here I am going to do right there, and what I did there I'm going to do right there. Just basically a single crochet all around. So do that, and I will show you guys what it looks like and what the next step is. And guys, your work should look like this. After that, so you're going to cut off your yarn, and we're going to work on the braids separately, and we're later going to attach that to the panel. So to get started with the braids, I'm still using my 3mm for this, by the way. You're going to make a slip knot, going to chain a total of 4 chains. So this 4 chains is basically a double crochet and a chain one. But you want to make loose chains, by the way, guys. Your chains have to be loose, especially your first chain, so you have to make that. So after your 4 chains, we are going to start working a cluster, and that is how we're going to create the braids. So we're going to yarn over and right into the 4th chain. So you're skipping 1, 2, 3, and into your 4th, you are going to insert your crochet hook, and you're going to grab the yarn and pull through. You're going to pull this all the way. From there on, we are going to do the same thing. So we now have 3 loops. You're going to yarn over, go back into that same stitch, and you're going to pull through. At this point you should have 5 loops. Lastly, you're going to yarn over, go into that same loop and pull through. So right after, you should have a total of 7 loops on your crochet hook. From here on, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. And right there, you just created your first lobster. From here on, you're going to yarn over and pull through. From here on, we are going to turn and we're going to repeat the same thing again into the stitch. So you're going to yarn over and right into that same stitch right there. Hopefully you guys can see. You are going to do the same thing by creating a cluster. 1, 2, and 3. And when you have that complete, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on your crochet hook. And obviously it looks funny now, but you're going to see what it looks like in a bit. From there on, you're going to yarn over again and pull through. And I just like to chain 1 and turn. Now we are going to do the same exact thing, but this time around we're working into this space in between each cluster. So you're going to yarn over now, go into that space, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. So we're doing this for 3 loops, by the way. So if you want yours to be bigger, you can go ahead and do more. So again, you can see the size difference. This was made with 5 and this is being made with 3, so you can see the size difference. From there, I'm going to just chain 1 and I'm going to go back into that same stitch with my second. So 1, 2, and 3. And from there on, you're going to yarn over and pull through, chain 1 and turn. Into this space in between these two, you're going to do the same thing. So yarn over, go in there, pull through, 1, 2, 3. Yarn over and pull through, chain 1, do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. Simple. Chain 1, turn, and do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. You want to use a loose stencil for this so you can easily work up your rows. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3. From there on, you're going to chain 1 and turn, and do the same thing by going into that space with 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3. And this is what we have, guys. This is what we're going to repeat because eventually we are going to fit this around the band like this, around the edge of the bikini. But we also want to make sure we have a long strap that is going to eventually fall on each end. So you want to make it super long. I don't know how many rows I will be needing yet, but I'm going to go back and forth with checking and seeing to see exactly how much I need for the front, and I'll come back when I have a good amount and also let you guys know exactly how much I ended up using. Hey guys, so I just finished my braids and I did a total of 73, I think. Yes, so I'm gonna show you guys the reason why I did 73. So from here to here I need 13 braids. So if I lay this across, and if I count from here to there, I have 13 and I wanted 30 on each side. So I already marked my 30th braid right there, which means this is gonna come here and I'm gonna have the edge on this side, and I also obviously have to need the same amount on the opposite side. So that's the reason why I did 73 in total. So we have 30, we have 13, and then we have 30 again. Obviously this is going to be different depending on how wide this is for you, but that's just how you're going to measure this. So now I'm going to grab my needle so we can attach this to the front side. Before we do that, we are going to create something at the very end of this so we don't leave it super blunt. So right there I just slip stitch right there. All I did was just slip stitch right there. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn, and right at the center I am going to chain one. Right at the center I'm going to insert a single crochet, and then I'm going to insert another single crochet right there, just like that. And I'm going to go inside and slip stitch. For me, I'm going to just pull a long loop like this, going back into the second stitch. So remember I did 2 single crochet. I'm going to go into the second stitch, grab the yarn and pull a long loop. I want to make sure it's the same length as the first one, but it doesn't honestly have to be perfect. You can just play around. So right there we have 4 loops. I'm going to go ahead and go back into the next space. So right here we have like a chain one we did right there. I'm going to grab my working yarn again and pull a long loop, guys. So at the end you should have 3 loops. So you have to play with the yarn, because the second loop is attached to the first one, but we want to make sure the length is the same. So when you're pulling the yarn, you're pulling on the working yarn right there, because if you pull on the side you will be pulling the second loop. Hopefully that makes sense. Or pulling on the working yarn. So right there we have 3 different loops. We are going to go back again into the very first single crochet we made, and we're going to grab the working yarn again and pull that, and then we have another loop. We're going to go back into the next stitch, which is the next single crochet, grab the yarn, and you're going to pull again. I almost pulled the wrong loop. Again, you want to make sure that you're pulling on your working yarn. I don't know if you guys can see exactly what I'm doing, but I'm going into the next stitch, grabbing the yarn, and I'm making sure that I'm pulling the working yarn, right, instead of the yarn that is attached to the previous loop. So you're pulling, you have to identify what yarn is the working yarn, and then from there on I'm going back into the last. So you're doing this on three stitches, and you're pulling as well, still making sure that you're not pulling the loose ends, you're pulling the working yarn. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to identify, but right there, from here on I am going to cut off my yarn, and I'm going to go ahead and seal this. So I'm going to cut off each ends of the yarn so I can have different loops right there. And with this working yarn that I just cut off, I'm going to go into the last loop, pull that working yarn, right there, identify where the loop is. So I know this is the loop on both ends. I'm going to tie that, and I'm going to tie that again a few times so I can secure the rest of the loops we just created. 1, do that a few times again. Until it's secure. Honestly, that's what we're doing. Right there. And from here on, we have it secure. We can just cut off and make sure it's the same length. And right there, we just secured the edge of the the braids. You're going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side, of course, but first let's just attach this, and then I can do that later on, and you can also do that later on. So grab yourself stitch markers, 2. So I have one on this side, and I'm going to open this stitch marker and attach that to the edge of this side. Grab the next stitch marker, count my stitches. Obviously, again, like I said, I want this to be 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes. So right into the 13th, or you can stretch this if you want. I think I'm going to stretch this instead. So now I'm going to grab my needle and I'm going to pull the yarn through, because we're going to sew this down. And I'm just going to pull a long loop through. It doesn't have to be extremely long because we're only sewing a small part of the braid. So I'm going to make a knot on one side, not on both sides, but you can also use a double string if you want to, but I'm just going to use a single string. But I want to make sure that my knot is super big and super secure. So I'm going to make few knots over and over and over, and I should have something like this, and this side has no knot. So we are going to start sewing right into this very first where the stitch marker is. I am going to actually go into this space on the, let me zoom in. So I'm going to actually start into the space, and I'm going to pass my yarn on the opposite side. Because we're using the same yarn, you are not going to have issues with the yarn because you can't even see it. So right there I just passed it. I'm going to go into this X, and then I'm going to come out into this loop, pull through. From here on, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. So right here I'm into the loop, but I'm going back in between the stitches right there, making sure, honestly there's no way I can explain this. You just want to make sure that you're going through a stitch in between these two cloths there, and you're going to pull and pull. Super simple, guys. That's how we're going to secure the braid. Right there I'm actually at the center, but I'm going to go back into a few stitches around these two cloths there, go in and pull through the center. See right there, you can see that you don't even see the stitch. I'm going to do the same, go back a little just so it's secure into these few stitches, and I'm pulling through the next braid. I'm going to do the same, go in here, you're making sure that your needle goes in here, and when it gets to the opposite side you're bending the needle to come to the front again. Just honestly the way you'd sew any simple thing. And just like that, we're literally securing the braid to the panel, and this is what I'm going to repeat until I get to the very edge. You want to make sure that your braid is straight. Keep a straight braid. Pull, go back, and pull, and pull, go back, and pull. And from here on I can take off my stitch markers, and you can see that the braid is secure. And to secure this, I'm going to go back and I make sure that I go into that last space on the piece and make sure it goes out in the center, just like that. and from there I'm gonna go back to seal everything. I'm just gonna go back into that same space and pull that through, and just like that we have it secure. And to finish that off, all I'm gonna do is I'm going to grab my yarn, my crochet hook, and I'm going to go into a random stitch at the back, and I'm going to grab the yarn and I chain one, and just like that it's secure. And from there on I can go ahead and sew in this excess yarn before I cut it off. And I'm just gonna cut off that loose end. And voila guys, this is it. We have this first half done. You're going to do the same exact steps. So you're going to create your braids separately, and you are going to go ahead and attach your braids the same way. You want to make sure that you're attaching the braids on this side, on the outside of the panel, and then I will show you guys what my final look looks like. But so far this is what we have.